All right, let's take a look at disk management in Linux and some Linux tools that are awesome for disk management that are absolutely free. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm also going to be showing you how to take an ISO file and put that onto a flash drive that can boot. So again, an ISO file is basically a DVD image or a CD image. It's meant to be booted from a DVD drive. And I'm going to show you a version. There's plenty of versions of Linux that will actually boot from a DVD drive and show you that, hey, you can just do that within Windows. So if you want to get these Linux tools, gparted is what I'm going after here. You could, if you have a DVD, you can actually just burn it to the DVD and boot off the DVD. Very, very useful to have hard disk management tools that are not in the OS that you're using in case you're having trouble with that OS. So we'll be taking a look at Rufus here, which is the thing that creates that image. And we'll be looking at, if I can get this out of my way, gparted. So gparted is basically GNOME partition editor. And first, that's where we're going to start off with. It is gparted.org. That's where you want to go. That is the official site. Now, you always have to be weary of making sure you're on the right site because there's gparted you're going to find all over the place. There's going to be lots of places you can get that. And the problem is that if they're hacked, then obviously something else is going on in your system. So gparted.org, that is the place. We're just going to go straight to that site. And you'll notice it's not very fancy. Notice that there's the tricky stuff, right? Download, sweet, that's what I want. No, that is for Microsoft bit driver download driver support. We don't want that. We actually want to go to download, and then they give a place that you can donate, which is awesome. You can donate like $1 or $10 or whatever. And they give you the definition of, hey, which one do you need, right? These are architectural designs, meaning that this is an Intel AMD processor. That's what AMD 64 refers to. This is an Intel processor that's dated, and this is an Intel processor. And so really, to make it easy for you, hey, you got a normal computer, that's what you want, AMD 64, and it's right here. So you're going to download this, and what you get is an ISO file. Now, I've already got it downloaded. I've already done that, so I'm going to navigate to that and pull it up. But before I do that, I want to show you, here is Rufus, right? I'm searching for Rufus. Rufus IE is the place. That's the official website, so they're not lying to you there. And we'll just go to that site so you can see what it looks like. Basically just says, hey, this is where you can create a bootable USB drive. Now, Rufus is really cool in the fact that it's just a single file, and you can just move it wherever you want to on a computer or network, whatever, and double click it, and it starts, which is fantastic. It will sometimes need a couple of other files, but when you're getting ready to actually create that flash drive that's going to be bootable for you, it'll actually tell you then if you need to, and it'll ask your permission. So Rufus 3.2 is the current one, and you can grab that, or you can grab the portable. I grabbed the portable. I honestly haven't seen a difference in those two, but that's what you'd grab. And of course, I've already grabbed those. So I'm going to go over to my virtual machine in VirtualBox because that is actually where I'm going to be doing this. So yeah, I don't really have the ability to record while my machine is restarting and booting into something else. And so I'm going to actually do it through VirtualBox so you could see it. But before we do that, I put this stuff in my OneDrive folder so I can get to it from wherever. And I have a big install folder that's got a ton of stuff in it. So I'm going to go to installs, and then we will find gparted, and that's the ISO. See, it says here, disk image. These are also disk images, and basically saying I'm going to make a DVD out of it. So I'm going to right click this, and this is Windows 11. So in Windows 10, you kind of get what you're looking for right off this main menu. I have to go to show more options, and what you're really looking for. Did I click on the wrong thing? I believe I did. Let's click on the right thing. There we go. What we're looking for is burn disk image. Whoops, sorry, my touchpad here is, I really don't like it. But anyway, show more options, burn disk image. So you could mount it, and it'll mount that gparted just like it's there, part of the system. Problem is there's only a little portion that's actually Windows accessible, and the rest is Linux. So you can't do anything with that anyway. You would need to burn the disk image and start up your computer, but it's very easy. You just right click, go to burn image, make sure you've got your DVD in the drive, and boom, you burn it. And now you've got a bootable DVD with gparted on it. So what I'm going to do is actually load it up in my VirtualBox. And I've actually got a gparted right here. And let me show you what I have done with this. So let's go to settings. And I actually just, you don't necessarily have to create a different VM for this. You could actually just run this from any of your other VMs that are Linux based. But I want to show you what I did. So I created a gparted install just by making a new one. I just told it was Linux. That's all. It's not a specific thing. So I said, hey, it's Linux, and use 263 or 4 for the kernel. That should be fine. That's all I did when I was setting it up. Because it really doesn't need a lot of RAM to run, it's only running on 4 gigs. It would run on less than that. As a matter of fact, I will show you. I'll dump that down to 2 gigs. And then I changed some of the display. I upped the video memory to 32 megs just because, that's still extremely low, but it makes a little more sense for today's hardware. And I enabled 3D acceleration, which doesn't matter at all, but no, I was there. So why not do it? Here's the big one. Here's the big one, storage. Notice these VDIs down here. There's a VHD. Let me show you the difference. So I'm down here on my gparted. So let's go to up here on Fedora, since that's what you use. And let's go to settings, and let's go to storage. That's the Fedora VDI that I made when I installed it. When you go through the process and it says, how big does this disk need to be, blah, 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 right? I created that virtual hard disk file, and there it is. That's what I did. But what the heck did I do down here on gparted? Well, because we are also talking about messing with storage. If you want to mess with storage in a very non-violent way to your computer, you can actually create a VM like this, and we'll have it boot straight off of that ISO, not even the flash drive that I'm going to show you how to make in a minute. You boot off that ISO, and then you can just keep adding virtual hard disks. So basically, that's what I've got. I've got the original one I made, which is 8 gigs. I've got another one I made, which is 10 gigs. And for everybody here, I'm going to create another one. So notice that when you got this selected, you do not have all your options available because you're actually on a hard disk, so to speak. So I'm going to go to the controller, say to controller, and then right here I get add new storage attachment, meaning a new storage hard drive. So do you want an optical drive or a hard disk? I want a hard disk. Then it gives you this weird screen, which we kind of looked at a little bit before, and it's way too tiny. And basically at this point, it's showing you all of your VHDs and VDIs, and it's showing you which ones are attached to a system. So you could try to actually attach one of those others. Don't do that. That's not the point of what you're trying to do. You're not trying to use some other hard disk that you made for a different VM. You're trying to use one that's just fresh, that's nothing there. So I'm going to go to create. And now it's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do a VirtualBox disk image, or would you like a virtual hard disk? Well, you only really need the VDI when you start up. That's like its boot volume and everything. And I could make another VDI. That's not a problem. But really, I'm just talking about a hard disk. I just need a hard disk, a virtual hard disk file just available to it. And so I'm going to actually select the VHD, and you'll notice that that gparted 1 is a VHD as well. And I'm going to actually say on this one, let's do a fixed size. I'm going to have to end up deleting all this stuff. And it's going to defaultly say, hey, you know what? You're messing with this gparted virtual machine. So I'm going to put this file the same place as your other stuff. And I'm going to make this one much smaller. And the reason why is I want you to see the difference, right? I want you to see that the other one was 8 gigs. The second one I did was 10, and this one is 4. And you'll see this appear. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. And it takes a minute, right? It's got to block out some space on there. Now, the honest truth is I have not chosen anything. So we have all the ones that are attached. Let me just get rid of that. And there's the one I created that's not attached. It named it for me, but there it is, 4 gigs. So I choose it, and now it's appearing on the list. It's fantastic. Now, the other thing is notice that I went out and found the live ISO file on my computer. So right here on the CD-ROM, I went and got the ISO just like I did when we installed Fedora or whatever. You just click here, come down to choose a disk file, and then navigate to wherever that is, right? I'm right here in installs because that's where I was. And I look around here, I jump past it in some way, but there it is. There's gparted. And I said open on that, and now it's ready to go. So let's see what happens when we start this thing up. It is powered off. Start it. Takes it a minute, of course, to go ahead and partition the RAM, as we would say. I actually have it in scaled mode from last time. And the scaled mode means it's going to be full screen so you can see it. It will start for you in a little tiny window. But I need you to be able to see this. And there it is, it's booting. This is exactly what you would see if you booted your computer with this. And I'm going to use large fonts. Now, these large fonts it's talking about are as it's getting into the system. So once the system starts up, it's not really talking about those fonts. I will show you. I want it large fonts because I want you to be able to see it. That's the most important. See how big those fonts are? It's really big. Because I want you to see it. And this is going through its thing and making sure that it's setting up the correct stuff and it's loading what it needs into RAM as opposed to having it spin off of the fake hard drive. This portion is actually saying, hey, do you want to keep the keyboard map? The keyboard map is actually just set to the most often used architecture. So no, I don't need to change that. And then this will say, hey, are you looking for a key map to install? Would you like to run Japan? That's 15. Notice 33 on there is US English, so I don't need to change it. In Linux, if they put something in brackets over there on the side, then they're saying that's the default, just hit enter. And the same here. Notice I've got a choice of 0, 1, and 2, and 0 is the default, which is continue to start X to use gparted automatically. What that is doing is basically saying X as in graphical interface. So it's going to start the graphical interface, and then it's going to start this gparted inside of it. There it is on the screen, and there it is loaded. Now, let me move my little video face here. We don't need to see me anyway, but we'll just move me down here. And there's the 8 gig, and there's the 10 gig, and there's the 4 gig. That's the new one. Now I'm messing with hard disks that don't really exist, and I can play around with them as much as I want. So I can take this hard disk and I can go ahead and partition it. Now, it's important to note that in gparted, it divides out the process of creating a table and the actual partition. In other versions of disk managers, usually when you select this one and then select a certain type, it'll go ahead and do this for you. But this is separating it out. So I got to create a partition table, and it says, you know what? This is going to erase this entire disk. MS-DOS is old school. MS-DOS is the old stuff. We use GPT. So you could look it up, but GUID partition table, that's what we use. We use GPT. So when you're messing with this stuff, you would just set it to GPT. That is, how is the partition table formatted? Not how is the partition formatted, but the information saying where it is on that partition. And notice there's a bunch of them. There's some that, Atari, what the heck? Yeah, this is actually used for, making compatible disks for very old systems, like an old Mac system or an old Amiga system. So GPT is what we want. I don't want to waste too much of your time. So now it's done. That portion is done. And notice that on that screen, I should have shown you that, it has apply, right? You got cancel or apply. Okay, so there we are. This is our unallocated space. Now I'm going to go over to partition, and I'm just going to create a new one. Sorry, I've got my controls in the way. New. And I'm going to use the whole thing. See how this is selected. So I can slide this back and forth. And it says, the minimum is 1 megabyte and the maximum is 4 megabytes, 4,000 megabytes. So 4 gigs. So that's the minimum and maximum. I'm just going to go for, the max. And notice it's got, what do you want to create this as? That gets into the book stuff. That gets into a primary partition has to be created on any drive. So I can't create any of these others until I create a primary. And I can name it if I'd like. I'll put some gibberish in there. And then this is the actual file system. And most of these you don't recognize because they're Linux. So ext4 is the default for Linux. Maybe 3, but usually 4. This is what we usually use on a small flash drive, a larger flash drive. This is Mac stuff there, right? There's a bunch of different things. And then way down here is NTFS Windows. So we'll go ahead and select that. And I'll say 4 gigabytes. We'll give it that label. And I'll hit add. Notice it does not say apply. It says add. Now, the reason why is because I can go through and do all sorts of different things with this, and none of it happens at all until you hit the check mark, which is apply all operations. So that's only got one operation. We're going to go ahead and hit that and say apply. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close it. You can look at the details, but it tells you all operations are successfully completed. So we close it. Now let's do something more fancy. So I'm going to go over to my 10 gig where I've made a bunch of partitions on here. And I'm going to go through and just delete all of these. So I'm going to delete that one. Oh, this is so scary. Well, actually, it's not. So I'm going to delete all these, but none of this is deleted yet. Right here, it has not applied anything. So that drive with all its partitions and all of its information is just fine until I hit this. They warn you, you're gonna lose data. And once you hit apply, it's gone. Now, no, not totally gone, right? You can get, AOME recover or whatever and start pulling data off of there. But for the most part, it's gone. All right, so I'm going to do something more particular here just to mess around with stuff. Again, I'm going to come up here to device, create a partition table, not MS-DOS. I'm going to do GPT. If you have any problems with GPT, like you do something with a flash drive with this product and then you go and put it in your Windows computer and it doesn't recognize it, yeah, then come over and do an MS-DOS because it's like you just can't get around the fact that that'll work. But GPT is what we use. Okay, now I'm going to create a partition, new, and it's so cool because you can just take this and I can say, you know what, I'm going to create that size and I'm going to put it here. So what this is doing at this point, let's just forget the fact, right, that this is just a file in a VM. Let's look at this like a regular standard hard disk. I am telling it, this is where I want you to start and end this partition on that actual physical space. That's what this is telling it. So I'm gonna, ext4 is fine. I'll put some gibberish in there. E4, we'll say E3. Yeah, that's E3. I want to go there. E4, and there it is. So now I'm gonna take this partition. I right-clicked it, hit new. And it's showing me, right, this is not what you see on the screen is not the total 10 gig space. It's the space of this partition. So I'm going to, just kind of mess around with things and I'll put half of it there and I'll say, let's use FAT16 for that. And this will be FAT. We'll add that. And there it is. Now I still have this unallocated space here and here. I can do whatever I want to with that. So I've got 2 gigs here. Sorry, there is actually something in the way there. And I'm going to take all that space and I will tell it, you know what, I need this as a NTFS. Call this one NTFS. And we'll add that. All right, and then I only have this unallocated space. Now I could just leave it and not do anything with it. But again, I'm experimenting. I'm just trying things out. I'm just messing around. So I'm going to take the whole 3 gigs. And I'm going to say use HFS Plus, which is a Mac. And I'll say HFS Plus on that. and add it. And there it is. Now, again, none of it's happened. None of this has actually occurred yet. I will go ahead and hit apply, and it's going to say you're going to lose everything. And now here it goes. And we'll see if all the operations complete successfully. I have seen that not happen, and it'll do a couple of them, and then you have to do them singly for some reason. Okay, all operations completed successfully. There we are. Here we are. So I've got a 10 gig drive here, and it's got 4 separate partitions on it. I've got this one that has one single partition on it, and I have this one that has 2 partitions on it. And where is this coming from? Well, yeah, it's in the VM, but this information is there. It's on those disks, those virtual disks. That's what it's reading there. So if we had the ability to actually, and we don't, if we had the ability to, we can go to the terminal and browse that way. But if they had a little file manager here, I could show you those drives just popping up. So that's a real nice and easy way to actually mess around with storage. I'm going to exit out of this and do it in a virtual environment and get really proficient at dealing with storage without messing anything up. Or again, you could boot a computer with it and really start messing with the literal storage that's there. Last thing. Let's take a look at Rufus. I have got Rufus over here. And I've got several versions, as you can see. So we're going to take the latest one. It's going to come up and say, hey, you want this to destroy your system? No, that's not what it says. It says, hey, you're going to allow it to make changes? Yes, I am. So it actually looks at the flash drive that I've got inserted, which is gparted. So to clear this up, let me back up and let me go, hey, let's just use Windows Disk Manager. So, oh no, let's use the fancy one. Oh, stop it right here. So let's use the fancy one. And so that's a gparted that I've made. And all I'm going to do is just, re-put the stuff on there. So I want it to be totally gone is what I want it to be. And so we have to look at, well, what do we got going on here? There's our D 1 terabyte. Here's a disk 0, and that's where our recovery, and notice our Windows is over there. I don't want to be messing with that stuff. So here is our gparted live, and it actually tells us, hey, this is removable. All right, so that's safe. This is what I'm dealing with. That's the one I want. So we will right click on that, and we can resize and move the partition, or we can format it. I'm going to go ahead and format it. And we will make it, no, I'm going to make it new so we can see everything change. And FAT32 is fine because I'm really not going to mess too much with this. All right, so notice it's turned red, like, ooh, that's a danger. Well, really, this is running the same way. It's basically said you put in a command, but you have not saved it yet. So I'm going to click apply. It's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? This is what I'm going to do to it. And you say yes. And it's okay. Okay, you did it. That's gone now. And so now we have an empty disk here. And the only reason I did that is so that when I launch Rufus, you won't actually see gparted listed, right? Right here, it's no label. That's exact. It's the same drive I was using before. And there it is. It's E. So now I'm going to go and select my gparted. And again, it'll do any ISO. So this Fedora workstation is an ISO. I could do that. But I'm doing gparted. That's what I'm doing. So it'll do this with any ISO. And you really don't want to change any of these default settings that it might have here unless it's not working for you. And then you would come in and change these settings. So basically what I've done is I'm on the right USB. I've only got one USB, and that's on E. And then I've got the ISO selected. And now all I have to do is see how it's going to make it a GPT, and it's going to use UEFI to make this happen. And it says it's ready. So I'm going to hit start. It asks me one question. Do you want to write the ISO image in that mode, ISO hybrid image, or do you want to write it in DD? You go with the recommended. Again, if it didn't work for you, then go someplace else. And then it says, hey, you're losing it all here if you do this. And it's like, yes, go ahead and lose anything that's on that drive. And here you go. Now it's analyzing the existing boot records. It's taking a look at everything and, oh, see, it couldn't create the partition there, which probably means I should not have formatted it fat. So just 1 minute, you don't need to sit and watch me format it again and then try it and all that. So we'll come back to this. Okay, I decided I wanted to show you this. This is interesting. So Rufus screwed up. Notice that there's that drive and it's no longer mounted at E. It's messed up. And if I click on this, then it has me create a partition. So basically what happened is as Rufus was going to create that partition on there, it just hosed out. It just quit, died. So F is available. Notice E is just like, oh, crap. And in order to really correct that, I'd have to restart and then E would be available. So we'll go ahead and let it put it on F, but I'm going to go ahead and make it an NTFS drive. And I'm not sure what's under advanced. Okay, just the before and after and SSD partition alignment. Sure, that should all work out. And we don't care about that. So we'll go ahead and say okay to this. Yeah, see, it's got an unknown error. It's like, I don't know. It just had an unknown error and crashed. I bet you that's won't even come up in disk management because it's hosed that drive. Now, that doesn't mean I can't fix it. So this would require basically a restart, and then I can do what I want to with this. Or I can actually go into my gparted and it'll destroy everything that's on that thing easily. Gparted will just like, I don't care, boom, get rid of it. Notice it says unable to connect to virtual disk service. So the fastest thing that will be for me is I'm going to pause it here and I'm just going to get a different drive that I need to use anyway. So hold on a second. All right, I'm back. I actually put in one of my parted magic flash drives, and the bad thing about parted magic is sometimes on some systems it just doesn't boot. But there it is. It popped up. It said, hey, I'm E and everything is good. So now let's go back and try it. You can tell that not everything goes as splendid as you want it to, but that's okay. We can actually come back to where Rufus was, and that's in installs. So that's right there on the shortcut menu because that's what I was doing before. And I need to move those Rufuses into that folder so that they're all in the same place. Sure, I got like 3 other versions in that folder. So let's go ahead and run that. It's like, yeah, you want this to do it? You betcha, because it is doing some dangerous stuff here. So there's my parted magic. Yep, I want all this. And I'm going to go and select my gparted live, open that up, and hit start because I'm not changing any of the defaults. It's like, you want an ISO image? Yes. Now this came up before, and so you should know, it says, hey, new versions of these are not compatible with one another. And, basically it's saying, I've got to go and get some of this, these files. Is that okay? And you say yes, and it grabs them and starts to go. And then again, here we are. All data will be lost. And this is what you should see. You shouldn't see it crash. And it shouldn't take too long. I won't have you sit here and watch this because it does take a little time. But basically, it's not a very big install. Gparted is pretty small, so it's not going to take a ton of time to write this. If you had a large flash drive that say is 64 gigs and you're actually putting Fedora install on it so you can boot from that flash drive, and install Fedora, yeah, that's going to take longer, right? Because Fedora is a much bigger install. All right, I'm just going to pause it for a minute while this finishes because I want to show you one other thing. Okay, there, it got to 100%. And if I'd had it started, you would have been able to see it actually goes 100%, but it does that really quick. The way you know this is done, and that's the last thing I wanted to show you, is the fact that this is all green. So it says ready. This should say done, right? But for some reason, they just say ready. And the only way you know it's really done is that it's totally green. This was not green before. It was down here doing the process. And the reason I didn't record it all is because it would go boom, boom, and a jump, and then it's done. And you don't catch it anyway. The other way that you can know, right? Let me go ahead and close this. is when you go to my computer or this PC, sorry, then you see it there, gparted live, and it's labeled it. Now at that point, I can't show you anymore. What I showed you of it booting up in the virtual machine is what would happen if I restart this computer and then I hit F8 or F12 or F2 or whatever it is to get the boot menu, and then select that, and then boom, and away it goes. So you could definitely make it and try it in class if you'd like to. But that is it for this, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that it's helpful.